We're here today thanks to Barclays with Rachel Corsie and Courtney Sweetman-Kirk to discuss the nominees for the Barclays WSL Manager of the Season award. Now, before we get into the list of nominees and pick our winner, the public vote is now open, so make sure you click the link below to cast your vote. Guys, are you ready to hear the nominees? Okay, this is the top three.
Go for it. Come on.
So we have got Andrée Jeglertz of Manchester City.
Really?
Shocked? Not surprised. Renée Slegers of Arsenal. And lastly, Martin Hoe of Spurs. Right, we'll start with Andrée Jeglertz, shall we?
What I think Andrée has given them is freedom, because you look at Gareth Taylor, and that's no disrespect to him in the way he works, but it's very methodical. Everything and everyone has their place. You see what he's doing at Liverpool now. They needed that. They needed that structure, whereas I think for the players that City had, did they really need that much structure? Maybe defensively, you can always argue that. But when you've got the likes of Viv Miedema, Bunny Shaw, Carolyn, those sort of players, let them do what they need to do. Let them express themselves, give them the freedom, and I don't think they necessarily had that much freedom under Gareth Taylor.
They have really benefited from allowing those players to thrive. I think he's done a great job. He's got Viv and Bunny on the pitch together, both feeling like they've had, maybe the best season we've seen them have. And they've had solid seasons in the past, but this feels like to get them both at the same time working, it's not easy to do because it's big players, big profiles. So that, for me, I think, has been really impressive. He maybe has just quite naturally benefited from not trying to come in and change too many things, but actually just lift some of those constraints almost. An incredible season, though. To be unbeaten at home, I think, as well deserves a mention. That's a remarkable record.
And we've seen some footage of his team talks in the changing rooms. Have you seen? He's like so calm, and it just feels like the players have got that energy and like trust in him to get behind him. Another little tweak, Yui Hasegawa playing slightly higher up the pitch, got on the score sheet this year, and he's managed to keep them so defensively solid at the back despite these sort of attacking changes.
At the back, I think his pair have improved, and I think he's found a formula that works with the players he wants to clearly in his head be their starting 11.
And that's the point that you make, which I think is spot on. Again, nothing against Gareth, but I think he made the players fit his philosophy, whereas I think what André's doing is he is fitting his philosophy to the players. So there is the element of the defensive stability. It's quite obvious as well, like you mentioned, it's a very good man manager, but then he's looking at the strengths of the players, especially in forward areas, and maybe slightly tweaking his philosophy to suit the players that he has.
All the teams in WSL, I think, are better now. So if you allow teams to get into that defensive shape, it's so difficult to break them down. And I think Man City have gone, as soon as we win the ball back, we need to get at teams who've got the likes of Bunny, Lauren Hemp, who's so dynamic down the sides, Carolyn's so dynamic, she comes in and through in between fullback and centre-back. And Bunny's probably been asked to be a little less involved in some of the phases, but just impact that final third. So it's been interesting to see them. I've enjoyed watching them and just...
Yeah, me too. Even Kirsten Kasperaj getting all these goals and assists as well. It just shows that even the defenders can get up and do a job.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, let's talk about Renée Slegers then, Arsenal manager. Her first full season in charge, of course, coming in as European champion. So a bit of a different pressure on them this season. They haven't got their hands on any domestic silverware yet, but they do boast the best defence in the league, currently sitting third.
Of course, is probably the best one to deal with it defensively, to be fair. That is not my wheelhouse. But no, look, I think it was always going to be the acid test for them because Arsenal, there wasn't the expectation in terms of winning the Champions League. I think even going into the final, everyone was like, it's Barcelona. You've come back into this season. They've had the likes of Leah out for a long period of time, Leah Williamson. Obviously, Chloe Kelly's been in and out. She struggled with injury as well. So they've had that to contend with, which all teams do.
And you mentioned the Leah Williamson injury. I think Arsenal like to play with ball-playing centre-backs, right? And that's something that René's had to overcome. You've also had goalkeeper injuries, Katie Reid, who was so good at the start of the season. So do you think she's done a good job of managing that?
Yeah, she has, I think, of settling the ship. And I think there is always this noise around Arsenal because of the way that they do things. Look, the way that they pack out the stadium in terms of the marketing and everything around them. They're very, very good. But with that, again, and just the fact it's Arsenal Football Club, and historically, before it was the Barclays WSL, they were the team to beat.
Oh,
go on, disagree with me. Come on.
No, I feel like there's two really strong arguments, but like at both ends of the scale here. Like they've lost one league game.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like to think if you're a manager, you think I've lost one league game. Surely that makes you
I
manager
actually
of the
forget
season.
that because that's an
It's an
insane
incredible
stat.
stat.
But it's just the draws.
The draws tripped them up
They
early
were
on.
battering teams, by the way, in terms of like possession.
Yeah.
But for some reason, couldn't get it over the line in bits and bobs, and that's where they've suffered. But you're right, to think that they've only lost one game so far and we're still having this debate is
I
a
know.
bit mad.
But I think that's the case and they're not top. But then my other argument goes to sort of, I need them to win more silverware. Like the Champions League was incredible. We can't take away from that. But domestically, they've just not. I don't think they've had the haul they should have, and I think they've done well to adapt to the injuries. But everyone has to do that. They've spent the money. They should have had a big enough squad to be able to do that. So I kind of have a little less tolerance to that, and that's maybe me being cynical. But I just think you're Arsenal. For most people looking in, I'm looking in from the outside. If you could pick one club to go to, you pick Arsenal. Because they've got the best resources, the Trailblazers.
Do you think they've invested that well enough? So, like for example, Olivia Smith, £1 million player, young, fantastic talent, got so much to give in the future. Do you think, in terms of the way that they've spent money, would that have maybe been better served? Like you look at a Chelsea, for example, they've got 2 players in every single position. And by the way, they've needed to lean on that a lot this season because of injuries. Do you think Arsenal could have spent better?
I think there's an argument for that. I think the Olivia Smith, there was a big fee. I think she's had a good first season for them. I think there's been moments of inconsistency, but I think she scored some really key goals for them. Really key. In games where it's been like a 1-goal margin, she's got some big goals. So she deserves a lot of credit for that. Because a young player, you can tolerate some of those moments when you can't always rely on her. I still think they're a little short in certain areas. Like I felt, at the weekend in the Champions League, I felt they really needed maybe an extra defensive type midfielder, and I think that they're a little short in that area. They've had issues at centre back specifically through injury, and I think some players deserve credit. Wubben Moy deserves credit because I could understand if our confidence was short at the start of the season because Katie Reid did come in at positive couple of games, but a young player, if you're Lottie, you're going, if Steph's available, she plays. If Leah's available, she plays. Now Katie Reid's ahead of me. Again, the manager deserves credit for how you've navigated that because that's not easy. These conversations aren't easy. No manager that I know loves these conversations. It's part of the job. You
know what must be quite difficult for her as well? The fact that as an assistant, and that's obviously what she was previously and part of the coaching staff, like sometimes when you can't go to the manager, you always, I won't say always, but you have a better relationship with the assistant because you feel like you can talk to them a little bit more. So to be in that position and then almost not have to cut that off, but again, like you say, she's navigating her way now. She's got a different role. It's a different experience, and then she's got a different relationship, and they're having to change. So I think that's quite interesting.
So I think one of the things that people have said about Arsenal last season and this season is their ability to break down a low block.
I think, again, it probably goes back to what I was saying to a degree about Blackstenius and Russo. I think at the start of the season, I couldn't see it. I didn't think it worked, or like I say, to a degree it did, but I think both of them lost something, whereas now that's starting to bear fruit. That's something that she's stuck with, she's continued with, and now you can see quite clearly that both players understand their roles a lot better. So, and you're looking at the Leicester game, you can argue that Leicester didn't put on much of a fight, but in terms of the goals they scored and the willingness to go forward, I think they're looking a lot better in the attack and more fluid, I would say.
And she did play Olivia Smith in the 9 for a couple of games, and she did well there. So trying different things.
She does try different things. Whenever you hear her speak, she's very measured, she's very calm, and I love this too. She always talks about the other people in the environment, and I think that does 2 things. One, it makes the people around you feel valued, and typically you get a little more out of everyone, which I think is bearing fruit. The other thing is, from her perspective, she can then ask from a little more from everyone around her. Because if she's going, I really value you, but I need more. I really value you, I need more. And if she just can get a little bit extra out of everybody, those are the small margins that add up in these big moments.
Okay, well, we've got one more to discuss, so let's move on. Martin Hoe, Tottenham Hotspur, he has taken them from 11th, second bottom last season, to guaranteed 5th this season. There was a lot of noise about him coming to Spurs. Would you say he's met expectations, exceeded expectations?
Got to have done, and as I said at the start, I've got a personal relationship with Martin. He was my assistant at Everton, and I think in terms of the way that he coaches, his technical ability, I always knew he'd be very good at that, but obviously sort of he's been away, he's been abroad, and the way that then he's obviously grown as sort of a technical and tactical coach to be able to do that as well as be a manager, because they're different disciplines. I think he's done fantastically well. I think it was a squad in disarray that wasn't together, that was not necessarily fighting against each other, physically or emotionally, but just lack of direction, didn't know where they were. And I have spoke to him a few times when we've been at games, and he's saying a lot of this was about bringing everyone together, putting everyone on the right track. They're sitting in 5th, they're quite clear of Brighton, so you would imagine that's where they've finished. Yes, they've had moments in the season where they've maybe lost games you wouldn't expect, but they've also gone and beat people that you wouldn't expect them to beat. So fantastic start, but it only now from this point gets more difficult because you've got London City Lionesses that, by all accounts, what they're going to do next season and the type of profile of players that they're going to bring in. Chelsea are going to come back with vengeance. Arsenal and Man City are always going to be up there. Manchester United is a difficult one at the minute. So for him to better what he's done this season in terms of a position in the table is going to be so difficult. But I think he's got now the blueprint of a very good team, and he's got the philosophy of what he wants to do, and also those connections in terms of, we saw it a little bit in January as well, those connections of where he's been and using that European transfer sort of market as well.
They're definitely in transition right now, aren't they? Lots of new players. And I guess he's done a good job to sort of gel these players together so far. What have you made?
Yeah, so if you think he's exceeded expectation, should they then get it? Because I would argue Arsenal haven't exceeded expectation.
Yeah,
and have Man City? I don't know.
And this is where, whether it's players or managers or teams of the season, I think this is where it's difficult, isn't it? Because a team like Man City that haven't lost at home all season, that go and win it, that haven't won it for 10 years, how can you not give it to them? The argument is, like you say, they've probably fallen below expectations in the last few years. So it's how you categorise it. Yeah, for me, he has 100% exceeded expectation. But can you give someone manager a season if they've not won a trophy?
Well, Arsenal could be in that position as well.
Exactly. So yeah, and that's where it's very difficult. You make a great point. What I would argue is, if they'd have made Champions League, that would have been a massive shout to say, you know what, I don't care if he's not won anything, to get Champions League with this side from where they were, but not close enough.
There's lots of teams get 5th and then they drift down again.
Off.
Getting 5th and 5th again is almost like the first step. So for me, I'm like, even can he take the group he has, improve it, and prove it enough to just do the same again? Because that's the hard thing at the moment, WSL. It's like year on year, you've got to improve X amount. But I even just think for Spurs to finish 5th again would still be growth. Because no one at the moment
has been able to do that. Highest points tally this year. Started the season 4 wins from 5, 3 clean sheets. But I think it's just consistency. So they've drawn against big teams and taken points of big teams, but then they've also had quite heavy losses as well. 5-2, 5-2, 5-1. So what do you think, like, tactically he's been able to do, and what do you think more needs to be done from him?
I think he's got players together, and I think he's given structure. A lot of players lean on that quite heavily, and just having clear roles and a clear system, that gives a lot of players a lot of comfort, which allows them players to play with this freedom that's almost this like psychological concept that attacking players look for, when really it's just about like, I just want to feel calm when I receive it. A lot of that comes from just having like clear defensive structure, clear defensive principles, and then having a clear identity. I think he's given them that, and I think the group of players have bought into that. I think it feels like the players enjoy the environment that they've had this year, and naturally that's boosted by the fact, you know, you're talking about winning 50% of the games you play. You get wins, morale is higher, you enjoy training more, the day-to-day is easier, players are willing to do the harder work more easily because they're enjoying the good parts a bit more, and I think he's done well to lean into that. And that's where I say I think next year it'll become harder, because there is more games, but to maintain that, you're looking at, you got to win again 50% of your games. And that's really tough to do.
Yeah, and I think that's it. Like we said, we've both like mentioned it. That is the acid test. Like maybe if we're here at this time again next season and they're sitting in 5th, even if they would, you know, what I've just said about what constitutes manager of the season, if they do that back to back, then that is a conversation. That is an even bigger conversation for him to be able to consolidate. Because as I say, the league's getting bigger. London City Lionesses are going to be a different proposition. They won't finish in probably, I think they're in 7th. They you know, they're not going to finish there by all accounts. Chelsea are going to come back with vengeance. So if he can do that again, that would be a massive achievement.
I can't argue with that. So we're going to have to try and make some decisions here.
Well, I think I'm going to say Renee, because at this point she's lost one league game, and I think in the first half they were solid, but they weren't clinical enough. The second half, they've been unbelievable. They've been the best team to watch. They've scored great goals. They've got the best out of a lot of players.
Is there some correlation between you as the defender going for the team that have only lost one? Maybe?
No, because I actually think, like, I wouldn't, see when I think of the players that have been the star performers for Arsenal, I wouldn't necessarily, I think their fullbacks have been good, but I think like primarily in possession, and I think that's why they've conceded fewest goals, is actually because they control games by being so good on the ball.
Despite their injuries and number of games.
Yeah, I think their defensive structures has primarily been maintained because possession-wise they make it difficult for teams to have the ball, to have opportunities against them.
I'm going to go Andrée. I think the way that he's brought the team together, he has made it look easy in forward lines, and I watched that and I think that would be a team that I'd love to play in, because the fluidity in it, I'm thinking, God, if I'd have played with Lauren Hemp, I'd have had like 20, 30 more goals than I have to my name at the moment in my career. So yeah, I think they're all very worthy, but to bring that title back to Manchester, and that's why I'm airing with Andrée.
Well, there we go. 3 very strong nominees for the Barclays WSL Manager of the Season award. Thanks, guys, for getting involved, and of course to Barclays for making this happen. We've had our say, and you can make your vote too. Click the link in the description below to cast your vote now.